from Swiller, Highland Mills. As you all are very well aware, last year the people of Timber Ridge were quite upset by the reassessment of their homes. And tonight you've appointed a new assessor. Once that assessor takes office, John, what input will the town board have in the reassessing of homes?
I think it's fair to say that the appointment of assessor any place in New York State, once the board makes the appointment, basically the rules and regulations that are followed by the assessor are basically independent in the terms of input from the board. We had our opportunity to interview, I guess, 8 or 9 people over the course of 2 sessions. We asked them each one very specific questions. All 5 board members were there, knowing what our experience was this past year. We were very in tune to what our feelings were, and we listened carefully to the questions that were presented that we gave to those applicants.
Then I'm correct in believing that the board has no legal input into reassessments once the assessor is in office.
I will answer that by saying, without an attorney here, I believe we have very little input, as we cannot call the assessor on the carpet and say, do it our way, or question, or what have you. I think that's part of the interview process, and I'll leave this open to the other board members too. Actually, I'm talking outside of my area of expertise. I'm not an attorney, but it appears to me, on the research I've done, that once you appoint the assessor, they have their own set of rules and regulations and what have you that they follow. But I would ask the other board members to respond.
Well, go ahead.
To the best of my knowledge, once you appoint an assessor, you can equate him to a Supreme Court judge where he has total autonomy.
In other words, none of the board members had any input into the reassessment of Timber Ridge before it occurred, or in fact after. Is that correct?
We did not have any input, nor did we even know about it until after we received some complaints from homeowners.
The board, this flyer, attention voters, did you know that incumbent council members Lorraine McNeil and Michael Aronowitz hired the town assessor and approved the plan to increase your assessments? Elect a council that will work for the entire town. Vote this Tuesday, November 6th, Amity Haviland III and Carlton Levine for Woodbury Town Council, paid for by the committee to elect Woodbury Democrats. This flyer was distributed last Sunday in Timber Ridge. Now, as you have all pointed out, this is a lie. Neither Lorraine nor Michael had any legal ability or opportunity to approve or disapprove the plan to increase the assessments of Timber Ridge, but that's not what was told to the people of Timber Ridge just before the election. There are around 450 homes in Timber Ridge. Most of those homes have 2 or more residents of voting age. That's over 1,000 possible voters who were given false information, blaming 2 of the town board members for the reassessment. Now, John, your running mate, Carlton Levine, won by 10 votes. And I find it impossible to believe that in that group of over 1,000 voters, possible voters, there weren't 10 people whose votes were influenced. I find it impossible to believe that there weren't 10 people whose votes were influenced by this flyer. If I'm a little confused at the moment, it's because I'm very angry about what's happened here. I find it very troubling. I find it frightening even that come January, the makeup of this board will have been determined by election fraud, by lies given to the voters just prior to the election. The exact same thing happened 2 years ago during your campaign. I'm not saying you put out a flyer, it was unsigned, but a flyer went out just prior to the election attacking Sheila with lies. I think it's past time for you to speak up about this continuing fraud, which is undermining the electoral process in Woodbury. It's a fraud from which you and your running mates have profited. Whether or not you took part, that is an undeniable fact, and I think that it must be addressed.
As I recall, I think you indicated that it was signed, or something at the bottom about the Woodbury Committee to elect the Woodbury Democrats. Is that what it said? Oh, I think, well, I think what you want to do is go to the committee that put this out and address that issue. Hold it, Jonathan. Why did I finish, Jonathan? Jonathan, you let me finish. All right? I sat here. I listened to you.
I'm not interrupting.
Well, when you got up, you did interrupt me. Sit down. To me, that was an interruption.
I apologize
Okay.
for standing.
All right. Well, all right. The bottom line, Jonathan, is if you have a concern, and it sounds like you do, not if, you address it to the people who are on that committee. There is a committee that meets on a monthly basis. Bring it to their attention.
John, you and your running mates profited by a lie. You are now, if you weren't before, you're certainly aware of it now. If you are not concerned enough about this to address it, I certainly will look into it, but if you are not concerned enough, that says something very troubling, very frightening. If I were elected, if my running mates were elected by a fraud that I knew about before or after the fact, and I sloughed it off and said, why doesn't somebody else go and look into it? It doesn't really interest me. I would be disgusting.
Well, that's your opinion, Jonathan. That's the way you feel.
Very much.
That's the way you feel. And I think there's ways to answer that, and this is not the forum I choose to answer it.